Welcome back to the Green Yard and to another beautiful spring day here in Phoenix, Arizona. We're starting to get towards the end of May, get a little bit more of those summer temperatures. It's actually 101 degrees today. Perfect weather for growing our stone fruit trees, our tropical fruit trees, really most of our perennial fruiting, flowering trees. This is great weather right now with those highs and the low hundreds, upper 90s, lows in those 60s and 70s. It really is perfect weather right now. And I have a really fun, exciting video today as well. I know I just recently did a tour of our tropical food forest. So far everyone has really liked that, really enjoyed it, and I wanted to kind of continue along with that same trend and do another tour for you guys. So this is our side of the yard here. We actually have our neighbors right behind us. That's their shed in the background. And this side here is our mini stone fruit orchard. So this is where we have our apples, our pears, our plums, our peaches. They're all going to be located in this area, and I do have another couple spots that I'm looking to put some additional stone fruit trees in as well. I would like to get a Fuyu persimmon and maybe a Florida Prince peach as well. Not what I have right now, but definitely something that I'm looking to gain in the future here to add to kind of this stone fruit orchard that we have along the edge here. For those of you just joining us, this is our green yard. This is the Green Yard. We're located in central Phoenix, and we live on just over 1/3 of an acre. We have a beautiful tropical food forest filled with papayas, long-end lychees, Suriname cherries, soursops, jackfruit, all kinds of amazing, wonderful tropical trees. And most of those tropical trees need to have a really established microclimate. And so fortunately for us, when we moved in, we have 2 large male mulberries trees that really provide that afternoon shade that's required for those tropical fruit trees. There are other fruit trees that we can grow here in Phoenix as well. I maintain that Phoenix is one of the most productive and best climates to grow food. And so besides all of those wonderful, beautiful tropical trees, we also have our stone fruit trees that do amazing here in Phoenix as well. I'll go kind of row by row. Right now we have a total of 6 perennial stone fruit trees here, and then we also have a grapevine in the back, and I'm going to mention kind of the purpose behind that as we move down the line. Of course, if you like what you see and you want to learn more about all those wonderful fruiting, flowering trees and plants that we can grow here in Phoenix, please make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I want to share as much as possible with all of you as to what we can grow and what is possible here in the Phoenix Valley, because I think it's really exciting, and I can't wait to harvest all of this food for my family. Speaking of which, let's start all the way at the far end with one of our more established fruit trees. It's going to be our Pink Lady apple tree. Here we go. Alright, this has to be my favorite and one of my most productive trees that I have here in the Green Yard. This is our Pink Lady apple tree. I actually did one of our more popular videos last year was about growing a Pink Lady apple tree in the Phoenix desert. They do incredibly well here. Most of our apple trees do really well. This Pink Lady, for some reason, seems to just be excelling and just doing really, really well. So as you can see here, it is currently just covered in apples. Last year we harvested probably about 60 to 80 apples off this tree, I would say. Surprisingly, most of the apples stayed on the tree. Not many birds actually got to them. This year we're actually having some fruit loss because of our dogs, our two green yard dogs. They are coming through and taking some of the fruit and biting it and eating it like this. So some of our smaller fruit we're losing, but in reality, this tree needs to be thinned even more than what I did to really get that larger fruit set on there. Otherwise we get really small apples like this. So this tree I had at our old house. I moved it over to the green yard. It's about 4 years old that I've owned it. So I've owned it for about 4 years here. It's been in the ground for almost 3 years here. No, I'm sorry, 2.5 years here in the green yard itself. It's a big tree. When I got it, it was a 15-gallon monster, and definitely an older, more mature tree, and that's part of the reason why it started producing right away, because it was that larger 15-gallon tree. I mentioned that before. If you can afford to buy a bigger tree, I would definitely recommend doing it. It is going to produce faster, it is going to grow faster, and most of the time it's more acclimated to our climate here in Phoenix as well. The nice thing about our stone fruit trees, especially this pink lady apple tree, it needs no protection whatsoever. It gets full sun all day, and this is a west facing wall, so this wall gets hot too, so it just gets baked all day. It loves it. It gets no protection in the winter. It needs those chill hours to produce those apples. So all around, this pink lady apple tree, I would definitely recommend getting one. It is a heavy producer and the apples are absolutely delicious, and I will be filming a harvesting video as we get closer to harvest time for these apples here. I do, in terms of fertilization, I do fish emulsion once a month. I do that for all of my fruit trees. Actually, all of my trees around the green yard, I do that once a month fish emulsion. Other than that, I do apply that sulfur as well, the agricultural sulfur, because it does require a lower pH than what we have here in Phoenix. Really love this tree. It is a beautiful tree. Let's move on now to our Granny Smith apple tree. Like I said before, we have 3 total apple trees here in the mini stone fruit orchard on the side of the green yard. So let's move on to our Granny Smith apple tree. Here we go. Alright, so we just talked about our pink lady apple tree over there. It's starting to get a little windy. We're actually having some unseasonable monsoon storms potentially coming through. It's kind of fun. We get some rain, which is awesome. Next to our pink lady apple tree, we have this beautiful Granny Smith apple tree. Granny Smith, once again, one of those classic apples, produces those really green apples in the grocery that you see in the grocery store. Does very well in the Phoenix desert. This tree, when I put it in the ground, it's about 2.5 years old, and it was a 3-gallon tree when I first got it. I can already tell the difference between our pink lady, our big pink lady apple tree that was 15-gallon, and our 3-gallon Granny Smith. Like I said before, if you can afford it, if you have the resources to buy that bigger tree, it is definitely worth it to do so. This Granny Smith, I've been a little disappointed with, actually. Unfortunately, it has flowered kind of like this, not a full flower, and it's usually only on like one branch. It's done that. I did that last year. It's doing it again this year, so I'm not going to get any fruit again this year, and it's a little disappointing, especially after looking at our pink lady apple tree that just has this abundance to it. Since it is a smaller tree and was a smaller tree, I expect that it was going to take a little bit longer to fruit, but I didn't think it would take almost 3 years to actually start getting that fruit. So I'm hoping that next year it does start to produce, we do start to get that fruit. It did double in size last year. It was a lot smaller than this, about doubled in size. And then I did a winter pruning video on it as well, so I did cut it back. This year it's already taking off, it's growing a lot more, so I'm hoping with that extra growth, it means potential fruit production next year. Just behind it, we have our Thompson seedless grape. Our Thompson seedless grape, totally and completely neglected last year. It was bought as a tiny bare root from, unfortunately, a big box store. I did buy it from a big box store as a small, little tiny cutting, and I totally neglected it last year. It actually grew on the ground. I didn't even put it up on a trellis or anything. This year it has taken off, just producing like crazy. Probably have 5 or 6 big bunches of grapes there. So I'm incredibly excited for doing a harvest video, doing a growing video on our Thompson seedless grape. They do very well here in Phoenix as well. Part of the reason I put it here is kind of that permaculture concept. In permaculture, we typically have our canopy, which is our big shade trees. So like in our tropical food forest, those will be our giant male mulberry trees. After that, we have our fruiting tree layer, which would be all of our stone fruit trees. We don't need that canopy layer here with our stone fruit trees because they can handle that full sun. They actually thrive in that full sun, so we don't need that here. And then below our fruiting trees, we usually have our herbaceous or our shrub layer, our ground cover, and then we have our vines. And so that's where our vines fit in. This Thompson seedless grape fits into this diagram. It is also covering up this wall to try to cool it off a little bit more, since it does get that blasting sun all day long. And I am actually planning on putting in a mulberry vine as well. I'm sorry, not mulberry, a blackberry vine as well. So blackberries can grow here. There's a type of thornless blackberry that does very well here in the Phoenix area. I would love to put it along this wall as well, help to create more biodiversity and maybe confuse and reduce the amount of pests that typically come along with those grapevines. So by adding that biodiversity, those bugs, those pests can sometimes get confused as to where they're going, which plant to attack, and it can thereby help save your grapevines. Grapevines do have a lot of pests here. We'll talk about that in a later episode. Let's move on though to our next stone fruit tree, which is just here to my left. This is our yellow egg plum. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Here we go. Alright, so next to me is our yellow egg plum. Now yellow egg plum is not typically seen here in the Phoenix area. Usually we have our other plums and they actually do very well here in Phoenix, just like the rest of our stone fruit trees. Definitely takes full sun, enjoys our cooler winters, our warmer winters, doesn't require a significant amount of cold hours. Yellow egg plums are usually used in desserts. They're not necessarily eaten as a whole plum. You wouldn't pick them off the tree and eat them. You can, but usually they're cooked for desserts. From what I remember from my research, it's more of a British tree, and they actually use it a lot in a lot of British desserts. I found it at a big box store, and I thought, I want a plum. I might as well try a yellow egg plum. Never heard of it before. Might be something cool to have in the green yard that no one else has. And so it has been growing really well. Just like my other stone fruit trees and our other tropical trees, it does get that fish emulsion once a month. It does like to put off a lot of suckers from the rootstock. So I do have to consistently cut off those suckers from the rootstock The reason you do that is to allow the rest of the tree to grow and thrive. Otherwise, the rootstock takes the energy from the rest of the tree. I'm not really expecting any fruit or flower here anytime soon. I actually don't know what that flower is even going to look like. But it did double in size last year as well, just like our Granny Smith apple tree. So I know it is happy in its spot. It is doing well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next few years. And hopefully I get some yellow egg plums off our tree. Next to me here as well, we have, I can't believe how well this tree is doing. This is a dwarf bonanza peach tree. I bought it. It was in a 3-gallon container, pretty small. I didn't get any fruit the first year. I didn't get any fruit last year. I was kind of giving up a little bit of hope, but I did notice that last year it almost tripled in size. It grew like crazy last year. Really, really healthy growth. You can see how healthy this growth is here. And then this year it just exploded with fruit. There's fruit all over this tree. I would say I probably have 30 peaches on here, and every single one is getting to be a big size. I even thinned probably 15 peaches off of here as well. So I am beyond impressed with the abundance that this dwarf bonanza peach tree is producing. With our dwarf bonanza peaches, some people love them, some people hate them. There are a lot of other peach varieties that do even better here in the Phoenix area, so I wouldn't necessarily jump right on a dwarf bonanza peach, but they are really pretty trees. I love that the foliage kind of drapes down over the fruit. It kind of hides those fruit from any birds or anyone else, and you really do get some amazing and beautiful peaches as well. So I'm really excited to do a harvesting video off this peach tree this year. And I mean, I still can't get over the abundance of this tree. It really is amazing. Let's move on. We have 2 more trees to go through in our mini orchard, our mini stone fruit orchard. Let's move on to the last couple. Here we go. All right, so I actually am really excited for both of these trees. I can't wait for the fruit. The one to my right, this is our last apple tree that we have. This is actually a dwarf Honeycrisp apple tree. It did very, very well last year, grew a lot. This year I was hoping to get some flowers off of it. But what's weird is that our Pink Lady apple tree wakes up super early, end of February, beginning of March. It's awake, it's flowering, it's putting on fruit. Both our Granny Smith and our Honeycrisp, they don't wake up until maybe middle of April. Usually for our Honeycrisp, it's been middle of May that it starts waking up. So unfortunately, any cross-pollination or any benefit I would get from having these 3 apple trees, it doesn't really come to fruition because we have 3 totally different times where they're waking up, they're flowering here in the spring. So maybe they'll get on schedule. I have a feeling though that they're just going to keep with that schedule that they're at. The nice thing is that even though I won't get that cross-pollination, they do self-pollinate. I just won't get as much fruit as I could get if they did cross-pollinate. Like I said before though, this tree loves our heat. You know, it's against this block wall. Unlike some of our older trees that are shading this doesn't get any shade in the summer. It just beats down until about this 5 o'clock time like it is right now. And then we start seeing some of that shade. But the tree is doing really well. I'm expecting another year of a lot of growth. And hopefully next year we start getting some flowers and start seeing some potential fruit off this Honeycrisp apple tree. They are by far my favorite apple, and I really can't wait to try them out. I do, however, really like that Pink Lady apple as well. Very sweet apple too. And then just to my left, our last stone fruit tree here in our mini stone fruit orchard is our Asian pear tree. Now, I got really excited this year because our Asian pear tree did flower. It had about 4 sections that flowered off of it. I was all excited. I thought I would get some Asian pears, but unfortunately, none of those flowers did form into fruit this year. I'm not surprised. Usually that first year they flower, we don't get fruit. It's the following year that we start getting that fruit. But this tree actually has had kind of a tumultuous past. When we first moved in, we were actually trimming our giant male mulberry tree, and a branch fell off and snapped the tree, snapped the main trunk. So all of this growth is actually coming off a side trunk. It is above the graft, so I know it is still Asian pear, but I really like the look of this tree. It has kind of those wider, more tropical looking leaves. And it's growing so well. It struggled the first year. First year it didn't do very well. I actually had to shade it in the afternoon. But after that first year, it has just taken off. Probably about 10 feet tall right now, maybe a little bit more. And you know, we're at the beginning of the growing season, so I expect this thing to be a really big tree by the end of the year. And hopefully next year that those flowers get pollinated, that fruit stays, and we really get some awesome Asian pears. So that's a little tour of our beautiful mini stone fruit orchard. I got a lot of abundance in here. I'm expecting even more abundance next year and the following year as we wait for some of these trees to reach that maturity level where they start producing fruit. I can't wait to bring you along with me as we continue this journey into producing my own food, as well as, you know, landscaping, creating this productive green yard. As always, live green, plant lots, and of course have fun. We'll see you next time.